Hi everyone, it's Linnea for LDRS Creative with another HSN kit. This one is the Butterflies and Buds slider kit, and this comes with a stamp set, a coordinating die, and then there's also the slider dies. This is the base kit, and there's an add-on called the Birds and Buds that you're definitely going to want to take a look at. There are videos on the LDRS Creative YouTube channel using that set as well. So this kit comes with a 4x6 stamp set, and that has two stamps. There's one really large stamp that has the butterflies and the flowers, and then there's a separate stamp for the leaves. There's also two dies, one that's going to cut out that large image, one to cut out the leaf image, and then there's the slider, which we'll see later on in this video. So to start with, I'm taking the stamps from the Butterflies and Buds stamp set and positioning them on a piece of white cardstock. Now remember that these are photopolymer, so you can stretch this material, so be careful taking especially that large image off of the plastic acetate. You're going to want to stamp these with whatever kind of ink you use for whatever coloring method fits. So I'm using alcohol markers, so I'm going to use my Raven hybrid ink to stamp these. I've gathered a bunch of markers to color these flowers and butterflies in a variety of color schemes. But I do keep my coloring itself quite simple. So for this first flower, I'm using yellow, but I only have two colors of yellow, a dark and a light. Same thing when I'm coloring in the center here, I have two browns, a dark and a light. And you'll see that that is my go-to coloring method, especially for small images like these. Occasionally I will bring in a third marker, as I will do with this flower here. I'm starting with my dark, and then I'll go to a medium, and then to a light, just because there's a bit more surface area. But for the majority of these images, I'm just using two markers. And I do start with my darkest marker, whether I'm using 2 or 3 markers. I start with my darkest, and then color out towards my lighter. That gives me the depth and shadows that I really like to have. I'm coloring a bunch of these images, and I'm going to stick to primarily yellows, blues. I think I bring in some purple as well. The leaves, of course, I'm coloring with your traditional green colors. Once I'm done, I'm going to trim this panel down, and then I'm going to grab my coordinating dies. So just like how there are two stamps, there's two dies in this set. That large stamped image is going to line up with this large die. You can see how that pops right over the top, so you can cut out all of those images at once. I'm going to position that so that it is lined up perfectly around all of those images, and then I'll use some tape to hold that in place. Then I'll do the same thing with that greenery piece. And that leaf piece is separate from that big stamp because you might want to have more leaves for your images. So there's a bunch of different flowers in here, and you might want to have one leaf for each flower, and you don't want to have to stamp all of those images again just to get that leaf. So that's why that one's separate. I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine and then pop all of these out, and I love how they all come out perfectly die cut all at once. So I'll pop them all out, and then you're going to see me bring in a little tray that I have, because since I was stamping and coloring, I went ahead and just did a whole bunch so that I could create a bunch of cards all at once without having to continually stamp and then color and die cut. So here is my little tray with all of my images, and now I'm going to set up my slider so that I can finish my card. You will need to cut one of each of the dies. So that large scallop, that's kind of going to be your main piece that you see. So cut that from whatever color you want to see. That middle piece is actually going to go behind. That's going to be the piece that you pull up. And then that little square is going to be your pop-up on the slider. So I have that scallop, and I cut that from blue. You want to fold on the score lines. So you're going to just do a accordion fold, and I like to fold back and forth to really get those score lines good and creased. And then you're just going to continue on and making tents and valleys, or mountains and valleys. So I start by folding back on that first line and then folding the opposite way until you have this kind of tent that pops up on your panel. So you should kind of have like this, like kind of a little A or half of an M or something like that. That's it. You just have to kind of fold that. That's it for folding. The rest is just adhering. So I'm going to hold this up to my camera here. This is that middle piece that goes behind. And you can see there is an impression in this die cut piece. It's going to go behind your scallop, but the base of this front scallop piece actually is going to go right up against that impressed line on your slider. So it makes it really easy to see just where you need to adhere these pieces together. You just have to remember that slider piece, that white panel, is going to go behind that blue panel. I'm going to crease my my tent fold the other way just to make it easier to adhere. It's okay, it'll go right back the way it's supposed to in just a minute. Now you want to add adhesive only to that small flap at the bottom. That's going to adhere onto that white panel. You don't want to adhere the rest of this down, otherwise you're going to have just a flat piece. I'm going to line up that little flap with the etched line on my white piece and give that a second to hold in place. You could use a dry adhesive if you want, but I like white or liquid adhesive just so you can wiggle that around a little bit, because you want to make sure that that scallop that's missing is going to be filled in perfectly by your slider panel. So now you can see when I pull on this, that's what's going to slide up and down. So it's really important that you only add adhesive to that small flap at the back. Now this front square is going to go on to the front of the panel, but again, you only want to add your adhesive onto the front part of that tent. So you kind of have like those three parts, the back, the middle, and then the front. We're only adhering onto that middle, that part I'm pointing to right there. So I'm going to use my liquid adhesive again so I can have some wiggle time, but you can use whatever adhesive you like. You could even add foam adhesive if you want to. The most important thing is you only add adhesive onto that front tent part of your slider mechanism. I'm going to go ahead and just hold that in place, making sure that that adheres well. And then you can see here how this is going to slide and pop up. It's really quite simple to adhere this together, and you can decorate this in so many different ways. All right, now I'm going to add this on to an A2 card base, but again, you need to be careful where you're putting your adhesive. You don't want to put adhesive anywhere on that white part because that needs to be able to move and slide. You also don't want to add adhesive to the top of your scallop because then you can't pull that slider out. So really, it's just those solid blue areas where you can see solid blue going down both long sides and then on the bottom. And I'm using skinny adhesive. I'm using foam tape just to give this a bit of lift so that the mechanism can slide a bit easier. And I'm going to add that onto all three sides, and then I will put that right into the middle of an A2 card base. You can see here how I have added my adhesive, and I'm testing to make sure that this slider mechanism is still free to move and slide. Whenever I make interactive cards, it is always my biggest tip to anytime you add adhesive, make sure that your mechanism is still moving the way it's intended to move. All right, so I have added this onto an A2 card, and you can see that this is still going to pop up and slide and move. And because I used foam tape, it's going to be even easier to kind of grab behind that scallop to lift and slide. So I do recommend using foam tape, but if you want to keep it flat and just use liquid adhesive, you can do that as well. Now for the fun part. We're going to go back to those butterflies and buds, and I'm going to just start putting them anywhere on my card that I want to add a little bit of embellishment. Now you do want to be careful that you don't add them over top of places that are going to be bending. So if you notice, I'm not putting them on that little blue flap that you see at the base there. Instead, I'm going to add it onto the blue scallop at the bottom. That white square, you can pretty much add embellishment anywhere you want on that because that's going to be popping up. So I've gone ahead and adhered some embellishments, and I'm going to again test to make sure that that slider is still working. And I wanted to show you that this slider is perfect for revealing hidden messages if you wanted to stamp something in the back there, or you can even pop some cash or a gift card into there and have that be a little like a gift reveal for birthday or an anniversary or something like that. Just a cute little idea. I'm going to go ahead and keep adding to this. I wanted this to really be like a butterfly garden full of flowers and butterflies. And I did also add a stamped sentiment from my stash onto the bottom of that white panel. I have added my butterflies and buds with a mix of liquid and foam adhesive, and I'm going to just finish up adding those and finish off this card. I love the way this card turned out. I think it's absolutely adorable. And remember that you can stamp a sentiment into the inside if you want to before you assemble your slider mechanism on top of your card, or you could put a gift card or cash or a little gift into there. It's just absolutely adorable, and I love all the different ways that you can use this kit. I hope you guys enjoyed this project and that you're inspired to try this Butterflies and Buds slider kit. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all soon. Bye!